Hi guys, this is Miss Navarro. I have a great story today about some spring animals, some things we might see in the springtime, and also about some spring vegetables. This story is super cute. It's called Muncha, Muncha, Muncha. And I can just kind of tell from looking at the cover, it might be about some animals munching on, it looks like a farmer's vegetable garden. We're gonna read and find out. This is called Muncha, Muncha, Muncha by Candace Fleming and G. Brian Carris. Look at the cover pages, Muncha, Muncha, Muncha. For years, Mr. McGreely dreamed of planting a garden. He dreamed of getting his hands dirty, of growing yummy vegetables, and of gobbling them all up. But he never once tried it until this spring, said Mr. McGreely. This spring, by golly, I am going to plant a garden. So he hoed and he sowed and he watched his garden grow. Lettuce, carrots, peas, tomatoes, yummy, yum, yummy, said Mr. McGreely. I'll soon fill my tummy with crisp, fresh veggies. He was so excited. Oh, what do we have here? But one night, when the sun went down and the moon came up, 3 hungry bunnies appeared. Tippy, 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 pat, muncha, muncha, muncha. They were no longer hungry. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his gnawed sprouts, he was angry. So he built a small wire fence. He built a small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. There, he declared, no bunny can get into my garden. So he built a small wire fence first. And the sun went down and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 pat. Spring hurdle, dash, 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 muncha, muncha, muncha. Oh, the bunnies got over the wire fence. It wasn't tall enough for them. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his nibbled leaves and his gnawed sprouts, he was really angry. So he built a tall wooden wall behind the small wire fence, all around his vegetable garden. Oh, he huffed. Those floppier little bunnies will never get over it. No bunny can get into my garden now. He built a tall wooden wall, and it looked like this. He thought that his tall wooden wall would keep the bunnies out. Will it? And the sun went down, and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 pat. Dig, scrabble, scratch, 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 spring, hurdle, dash, 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 muncha, muncha, muncha. Oh my goodness, the bunnies got in. The wooden wall was not too tall for them. And here you see Mr. McGreely dreaming about his carrots. Oh no. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his chewed stems, his nibbled leaves, and his gnawed sprouts, he was very, very angry. He made a deep, wet trench. He dug it outside the tall wooden wall and behind the small wire fence, all around the vegetable garden. Ha ha! Because I have dug this deep, wet trench, those puff-tail little bunnies can't get under it. They'll never get over it. No bunny will ever get into my garden now. Because he had dug a trench. And the sun went down and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 pat. Dive, paddle, splash, splash, splash. Dig, scrabble, scratch, scratch, scratch. Spring, hurdle, dash, dash, dash. Muncha, muncha, muncha. Oh my goodness, the trench wasn't tall enough for the bunnies to get into. they found their way in. Oh my goodness, he is going to be so upset. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his chomped blossoms, his chewed stems, his nibbled leaves, his gnawed sprouts, he was furious. He hammered and blocked and sawed and stalked. He drilled and filled and trapped and locked. And he built a huge, enormous thing before the deep, wet trench behind the small wire fence. All around his vegetable garden, I've outsmarted those twitch whiskers for sure, he claimed. They can't get through it, they can't get under it, and they can't get over it. No bunny, no way, no how can get into my vegetable garden now. He built a big wall that the bunnies apparently can't get into. Let's see. And the sun went down and the moon came up. Tippy, 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 stop! The three bunnies looked and they smelled and they touched the huge, enormous thing before them. And tippy, 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 pat, the bunnies hopped away. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his untouched vegetables, he was happy. For the first time in a long time, he was happy. I beat the bunnies! I did! He did a little jiggly wiggly victory dance. He climbed on over, jumped across, squeezed between, crawled under until he reached his vegetable garden. Aha! Sighed Mr. McGreely at last, smacking his lips. He picked and pulled up the lettuce, the carrots, the peas, the tomatoes, and with his basket overflowing, he reached inside for something yummy. Muncha, Muncha, Muncha. What did he find inside of his basket? He found the bunnies eating carrots. Well, I guess you can't win, Mr. McGreely. And they all ate the vegetables together. Okay. Oh, that was such a funny story about those three bunnies who just kept sneaking into his vegetable garden. And at the end, I guess they all technically won, right? So what I want you guys to do is create, with a sheet of paper, I want you to create a 4-part retell. We're going to do a 4-part retell. And I want us to tell the 4 different ways that Mr. McGreely tried to keep the bunnies out. So if we're thinking back to the story, the first thing he built to try to keep the bunnies out was a wire fence. So on my first column, I wrote, first he built a wire fence, and I drew the wire fence right here. Okay, and then you got to think back to the story. What is the second way that he tried to keep the bunnies out? Because they got into the wired fence and he said, oh, nope, I'm going to build a wooden fence. He thought that building a taller wooden fence would keep them out. So you can see I wrote second, he built a wooden fence, and I drew my wooden fence. And then the bunnies still got into there, so you've got to think of the third way. What was the third way he did to try to keep the bunnies out? Remember, he dug a trench. He dug a trench. Very good. I wrote third, he dug a trench, and I drew the trench right here. Third, he dug a trench. And then we have to think of the fourth way. The bunnies still got in after that. The fourth way was he built a huge wall. Fourth, he built a huge wall, very tall, just so the bunnies couldn't get in. So I drew that on the fourth column, and you should do a retelling of the 4 different ways Mr. McGreely tried to keep the bunnies out. So I want you guys to do that in your spare time, and then you can take pictures of it and upload it to the Facebook page. I can't wait to see your work, and I really miss you guys. Okay, have a good day. Good luck working.